it's not just about some big thug came along and said, do what I say or I punch you. That's not how oppression really works in the real world. And so this movie, more than any other that I've ever seen, really spells out how that mind control works and how the most devious, nasty people in the world actually get the power that they get.
I think that was an incredible film. It was thought-provoking. People from different ideologies will find some common ground and be enlightened by the things that are portrayed in this movie.
What y'all have done is successfully taken the puppet show, showed the world how we're all being enslaved, and that slavery was never abolished. It was expanded to include everyone.
I was impacted, very much so. It's a reflection of today's society through the lens of our past. What we're all experiencing today has been recycled throughout the history of mankind. And it's nothing new. New tricks, but the same perversions, the same evil, and of course, different puppets.
But it's truly about freedom and understanding that we need to spread the word that we don't have to be victims of the state.
I think it's important that people see this movie, a very powerful movie, and I can't wait to see where this goes and how it evolves.
You may have never heard this very powerful freedom movie called The Jones Plantation. It just came out recently as of me making this video right now, and I consider it to be the most powerful freedom movie to date, and I'm not biased when I say that. I'm saying that because it's coming at it from a different angle, very different from a lot of so-called freedom movies out there. A lot of them tend to focus on statistics and facts and just telling it like it is and then having experts come on and all sorts of things, looking at history. No, this one looks at philosophy. It tells a story. It's more of an entertainment film. So I think that approach has an edge over a lot of other so-called freedom films. And in this video, I'm going to give my total unbiased, unfiltered review. And if you know me, I don't curse, so you don't have to worry about too much on filtering here. But I also held a questionnaire at each of my movie screenings I did for this film in Florida. I did 2 movie screenings, so that means I saw the movie twice. So I saw the good, I saw the bad, I saw people's opinions and their reactions. And so I'm going to share a lot of that in this video. I'm also going to share a lot of footage from those events in this video, so be sure to just check it out and look at it because I find it quite inspiring. The events we're doing are awesome. They're out the door, some of our events, and we're just bringing people together. You can post it on meetup.com, eventbrite.com, allevents.com. You just set up a computer, you connect an HDMI to a TV or a projector. It's not that difficult just to bring people together, and it can bring you many places because from there we then build a Telegram or a group chat where everybody can come together, and then you can do more and more events, and the potential is almost basically infinite. So you can definitely do a lot when you bring people together like Jim Gale does in Food Forest Abundance. He's doing a massive event on the 11th. Okay, so that's November 11th of 2023. So that's awesome to hear as well. And if everybody can just create events in their area and inspire others, you don't need to be picking fights with anybody. You don't need to be complaining on the internet. You're trying to change the world, and you're doing it pretty effortlessly over time because people start to come together on their own and people start creating events on their own, and all you did was just bring people together. So you can find a lot of magic happening just by doing that alone. But this video is not focused on just creating events. It's about this movie, The Jones Plantation. So if you haven't seen it, let's watch the trailer together here. And then we'll go over the questionnaires that I did. I won't go over personal information too much, but we'll discuss the 3 questions that I asked everybody who attended the film.
You can control a man for a period with brute violence, but you cannot truly own a man unless he thinks your word is law and that he must obey, and is virtuous for doing so.
We are losing money. A little more every month that goes by with no end in sight. They can sense weakness, and they are gonna smell blood like a gator to chum. They're gonna kill us both.
Mr. Scott said this man is a miracle worker. I think he can help us. You're a Nick?
Good people, good people. My name is Mr. Smith. As of this very moment, you are now all free. Free at last.
From now on, we are all in this together.
This plantation will run on equality. I've created something called Jones Plantation Credits.
We're gonna keep them up to their ears in debt.
Jimmy Jack will now be in charge of our new security team to protect this plantation and to serve all of you. You two are gonna have a little contest to see who can win the hearts and minds of the human livestock out there.
Bo Jones!
Most people are weak-minded to wield real power. You must be willing to do what most consider unthinkable.
What most people consider to be unthinkable is that men like you even exist.
That's our greatest advantage. As free people, we work together for mutual benefits, pledging our love and loyalty to Jones Plantation.
We are not free. I ain't no slave. They have tricked you into thinking that choosing your own master is the same as being free.
You offer them a truth that they don't want. They want to feel safe.
There's a dark thing going on in this plantation.
Justice!
Every man deserves freedom, but freedom isn't free.
I'm Nathaniel Jones, and I approve this message. God bless you, and God bless this glorious... Toodaloo.
Okay, so that's that. So that's the trailer. I think the trailer was done well. It actually covers like a lot of the movie, even though I didn't get that from the trailer. Like, I didn't think it was going to spoil a lot of the movie, and it really doesn't. But it definitely shows a lot of it. Once you watch the movie, you realize that's like, oh wait, the trailer does show quite a bit, like toward the end too. So that's just a side note. It doesn't really spoil anything, but you can see, if you do pay attention to the trailer, that it is basically an analogy. It's symbolic for the real world, talking about slavery in this film. Now, this, first of all, can be alarming to a lot of people. The idea that you can connect slavery to our current condition here on Earth. And I'm pretty familiar with that, considering the fact I wrote a book about modern abolitionism and modern slavery, and talking about political slavery as taught by 19th century abolitionists like Lysander Spooner, Ezra Heywood, Josiah Warren, William Lloyd Garrison, even the Transcendentalists, you know, and the list goes on. I talk about this a lot within my works, so this film is very fitting for the abolitionism that I talk about. I even call myself an abolitionist. So I'm really, you know, I was pretty ecstatic, not gonna lie, internally, to see a film like this being produced. The issue, however, also is that when you show an individual this film, somebody who's completely new to any concept of what the film is about, or you know, maybe they think it's about slavery, that's the issue. They often like assume it's a slavery, ball and chain, physical, hard labor type of historic film or something of the sort based in the 1800s. They don't realize it's more of a symbolic film, and in the film there's a lot of humor, there's a lot of just, you know, messages that come to light that are just mostly to make you question things. I mean, there's even times where the characters come to the camera and they're talking to you, which is interesting. You know, it's like, oh, I'm gonna go out of character for a moment and just talk to you, the audience. That I found was actually quite an interesting touch. The whole film is very interesting because it's unique. This is like my biggest compliment to the film. The fact that it's approaching movies or approaching freedom-like ideas in a very unique way, okay? So what I mean by that is everything, the language, the theme, the talking about slavery, the symbolicness of, oh, here's the reserve notes. And I don't think there's other films that have done that before. You can correct me if I'm wrong. I'm not aware of films that have done that or to this extent. I know that there are slavery-like films out there, but none that really compare it to the modern day and all the things that we do in the modern day that keep us enslaved now. And in case you don't think that's the case, I'll put some questions on the screen for you. I do this in like every video I do. Those questions will help you think for yourself, am I really a slave? Or am I enslaving others? I don't realize it. think about it. What is your definition of a slave, and do you allow other people to live their life the way they want to, right? Very basic, and this film really breaks it down from the beginning. Like, here's just a normal plantation and how it turns into this complex plantation where the slaves are okay with their condition and they think they're free, which is quite an interesting twist on slavery, although it's actually true historically. And I have the proof as well, looking at the abolitionists and what they warned us about, and talking about how chattel slavery is only one form of slavery. So this film really puts that in perspective. Now, talking about chattel slavery, the different forms, and the abolitionists, of course this film doesn't go into that, because this is an entertainment portrayal of the ideas. But nonetheless, people don't realize how literal this film can be, not just in what it represents, but what it actually is doing. And looking at the abolitionists, like I said, which is not very a common focus. You know, I've done interviews talking about abolitionism and the abolitionist, and I just don't see a lot of people talking about that. So aside from that, and people being off-put to the idea that it's a slave-like movie, I think once they watch it and they give it its time, it's the most powerful freedom movie they can watch, simply because the whole thing is quotable. And even Larkin Rose, the writer of the film himself, said the whole thing is memeable, you know. And as I watched it the second time, you know, I realized, yeah, this is pretty darn memeable. The way the characters look at each other, the things that they say, and the surprise reactions, it does keep people pretty engaged. And the music is also pretty darn good. I think the way the filming was done was good, and the acting was good. If the acting wasn't good, I'd be totally honest with you and be like, hey, you know, I think the acting is pretty bad. But I thought the acting was pretty good. Now, again, this is my opinion. You can totally disagree with me and write in the comments, oh my gosh, Corey, you're wrong, right? And you can totally do that if you want. But generally speaking, I think they did a good job on everything. I do know from holding the 2 movie screenings that I did that the highlight of the movie was the political campaign ads that were taking place in the movie. They did these little advertisements like you see on TV for politicians nowadays, to choose between slave masters, and it was like a little cutscene, and people laughed. It was funny. People didn't laugh on the original slave plantation owner, his speech, because I think it didn't deal with as much leftist type of ideas. It was more of a right-leaning idea. But still, if people realize the hypocrisy and the symbolic nature of that part of the film, I think it's all laughable. The fact that anybody will do that nowadays, the fact that people will vote between 2 masters, you start to laugh at all of it, and you realize it's all a joke, right? Once you understand it. But at first, it's going to come across shocking. It's going to come across even confusing. I'm pretty sure if I watched this movie and I was new to all these ideas, I would be a little confused by the ending. I would be a little confused by what happens within the film. Because, you know, I did watch it twice, and there were things I didn't pick up on the first time I watched it. And also, you know, you have to have context for why the ending ended the way it did. And once you have that context, you realize, wow, okay, this is why people don't listen to those trying to warn them, like in Nazi Germany or Soviet Russia, or why rebels get killed, why people have been killed throughout history and people have been jailed, etc. I mean, you start to add it all up and just look at the patterns of history. You start to just connect the dots between the movie and real life, and that's what the intent of the film was to do. So I think they did that pretty darn well. Aside from that, they used the N-word a few times actually in the film. I thought it was just like covered not in the film because, you know, it's like blanked out sort of in the trailer, but it is actually said in full in the film, and it's said several times. But you have to bear in mind that is the nature of that time period that the movie is capturing. And the same thing with like all the horrific events, like a child is killed in the movie, and some other things that, you know, my parents and other people I know thought were pretty dark. Well, it's just the nature of that time period, and if we're going to be honest, that's what it was. And to think that that isn't still happening nowadays is also wrong. I mean, because there are a lot of problems happening nowadays. There's war still happening. There's still slavery in different parts of the world. There's hardships every day that we don't see, and some of them worse than back then. Okay, but it just depends on how you look at it and where you're looking. So let's not like try to escape reality. This movie deals with hardships, and the world has hardships. So something that coming to grips with is not utopian. It's not, you know, fantasy to say, hey, what if we can just leave this plantation altogether and end this whole madness? I don't think the movie went into that. I would say that there is a solution to the movie, which the movie doesn't really get into, and that is educating the slaves and helping them realize that they're free, and then having an abolitionist help them. I could see this movie going into a part 2, 100%. And the reason why is because the way it ended. You might notice, but the slave driver in the beginning of the movie, at the end, he has some sort of sympathy toward the children. He's like, you don't mess with children. There's dark things happening on this plantation, right? And he starts to change his mind throughout the course of the film, but we never see the end of it. We don't see him cheering on the death of a slave who considers himself now like totally free mentally because, you know, he was hung. But you see this guy who could be a potential abolitionist in the future, and you definitely see foreshadowing in the beginning of the film. Are you one of those darn abolitionists? I want to clip that and put that on my channel. I thought that was hilarious because, you know, it's kind of like saying, are you one of those darn anarchists? Are you one of those rebels of society going against what we're trying to build here, you know, what we're trying to do? And so it's pretty darn crazy. But I do think it can definitely be a part 2. You have some abolitionists who are trying to arm the slaves, trying to educate them, and then all of a sudden you have all this clash between the slave masters and the abolitionists, but the slave masters can't do anything because they're outnumbered drastically by the people who are now realizing who they are meant to be, and they realize that they were wrong for cheering on the death of their fellow human being, and wrong for thinking that they were free when in reality they were not, and that they were duped the whole time. I could absolutely see a part 2 in that regards, but for them to leave it like this in the movie, I think is more impactful. Because it says, hey, I'm going to leave you on this cliffhanger of this is the reality of the world. People are not going to listen to you when you share with them the truth, and you're just going to have to deal with that. It's a really hard reality, but ultimately that's what we're dealing with now. That's where we're at in humanity. If you follow this information, the stuff that I share on my channel, you're one of us. You're one of the people who are sharing the truth into a world that doesn't want to hear it, or even we're afraid of sharing it with them because we don't know how they're going to react and they're going to attack us. And we've had just mere conversations and we try to be respectful. And even then, it's not enough. People attack us and they make all these assumptions and they say, you're chaotic and you're causing problems, when in reality, they're the ones causing problems by enforcing violence on everyone else through law, by making everybody else comply with their idea of a perfect society through government. They're the ones that's utopian, but instead they project it onto those who they don't even know the position of, the anarchist, you know, the philosophical anarchist, not the one that's burning down streets with masks on, no, the one that says, this is why all states are violence, this is why all government is slavery, this is why all government doesn't work, why limited government never sustains. You know, these are the people that most people are going to ignore because they say that's just impossible and that's just utopian and we've never heard of it before. But at least if you've never heard of it before, why not look into it? So in case you are new to it, go ahead, watch the movie. You know, the movie delivers what I'm saying in a very simplistic, entertaining way. And again, it builds up. Oh, here you have problems on the plantation. Well, now let's introduce this guy who's going to make the slaves want to work hard and make them, you know, dependent and in debt, and give them debt notes and give them all sorts of things that are symbolic for Federal Reserve notes and what we have now with our paper money system. Okay, so it basically gives you a history lesson, even though it's all entertainment. So now let's go on to the questionnaire part of this video. I mentioned that I did a 3-question questionnaire, and it's actually 4 questions. For this movie screening. I did 2 movie screenings in Florida, so I'm going to read some of these, but not all of them. Again, depending on the responses and who it is, I'm going to keep the information rather confidential. But here are the 4 questions. Do you know any helpful locations to do interviews or provide freedom-based material to the public? Okay, that's one question. Second one is, do you know any good groups, businesses in Florida to network with? What plans and ideas do you have for the freedom community, and what's your main critique of the freedom community? Okay, so those were my questions. You can do the same thing if you are going to do a movie screening near you. I highly recommend it. And so this person said, networking and meeting people in person. This is what they want to have as an idea for the freedom community. So doing more in real life meetups, I totally agree. Their main critique is to just say no to politics, and politics is divide and conquer. And so I definitely agree with that. Let's go into the next questionnaire. So this one says that we should print up small little like 1/9 of a page, you know, print information on truth and keep it in our pockets and then hand it out everywhere we go, and even going to like festivals and then just mass networking. I totally actually agree with that as well. You know, strategies like that. There were pamphlettists back in the 1800s, the 1700s. Even Thomas Paine just traveled up and down the United States, and that's how he got popular. Lysander Spooner did the same thing. This person mentions the MAFA group, Make Americans Free Again. This is a group you can network with. I agree. I mentioned MAFA and the American State Nationals. That is the American Common Law Assemblies. You can network with those groups, even though they may not be exactly on the same page when it comes to voluntarist ideas. You can bring it to them. They are rather a receptive audience, at least most of the time. And again, you know, I don't want to generalize. You have to look at the individuals that are there. But definitely you should connect with MAFA and the assemblies. And let's see, you can do monthly emails, weekly emails, right, for newsletters if you want to do. You can set up a meetup group. This guy mentions that he has a meetup group that he holds to bring people together. So definitely a great idea. I agree. This person says, you know, we need to work with the freedom community and we need to stand for the rights of the people. I agree on that. This person mentions a helpful location is Liberty City, Colorado. And they mentioned a farm. I'm not sure about that. I'd like to learn more about that. They mention good groups and businesses, New Energy World, okay, Save Our Soil, and Florida Power Management. And then, of course, we're in Florida, so some of these might just be Florida-based, but they also mentioned to help communities grow and build across the country and world. That's their idea for the freedom community. I agree. This is why Freedom Cells was set up. And then the main critique was there's too much doom and gloom, and there needs to be more solution. I agree. There needs to be more solution-based action rather than focusing on doom and gloom. I see that a lot within independent media. 100%. Very good critique there. This person says a helpful location would be memorial parks, okay? Getting more kids out of public school and doing neighborhood backyard schools, and making sure that our core values need to be harmonized. That's what they said about the freedom community. I agree. I think there's a lot of division, even just among simple ideas. Like if we all agree that we want freedom, then why not just stand on that? You know, why are we so divided on other things, like the news that rises to the top, and why are we so focused on those symptoms? Why not get to the root cause and unite around the basics? Let's see. What plans and ideas? Well, free libraries. There are free libraries where you can like leave a book, take a book. Those are good ideas too. If you're also like in a community, a neighborhood community, you can set up like a little book drop. I like that idea as well. And their main critique of the freedom community is that it's not big enough. I actually think it is big enough, just people don't know that each other exists. Is it big enough? I mean, obviously not, because otherwise we would be free. But that's more so, I think, the lack of action, the lack of knowing how to actually attain freedom, because I think it's possible already with the amount of people in independent media and in the freedom community. I think there's just a certain amount of action necessary within that community, a certain amount of knowledge, a certain amount of unification, if you will. This person mentions Young Americans for Liberty, Students for Liberty, Florida Freedom Family, and they have different steps of how to achieve liberty and win by 2030. Groups like these, I'm a little bit more skeptical of. Not the Florida Freedom Family one, again, that's more Florida, but the other ones, Young Americans for Liberty, they sound like more national organizations, and a lot of them tend to be very political, very politically active. So we have to be careful with that, because again, that reinforces the very root cause of the problem, which the film goes over. The film talks about essentially the illusion of voting to be free. You're not any freer by choosing a new master, and that's not, you know, the route to freedom. Freedom is a philosophical, moral, spiritual issue. It requires teaching the slaves directly rather than changing the slave master. That's not going to change anything, because the slaves still want to be slaves. Now, I know, again, saying the word slaves instead of people can be a little hard on others, but as you watch the film, you'll realize why I say that. Here we go. Businesses, you can, you know, grow food, like have survival bars. I agree with that. Campus locations, Ladies of Liberty Alliance. I haven't heard of that one. Creating a community of 5 close friends within 5 miles of your home, so you have a small army right around you. I agree with that one, actually. And you know, you don't need to have everybody in one space, because that kind of makes you more of a target, but rather spread out. But you have people, you know where to go. I agree. I think that's really essential. A lot of friends of mine actually mentioned this exact strategy, so I'm not sure if it's coming from a specific source, but generally speaking, you definitely should have a community that you're building just over time naturally with creating more events like I'm doing. And this person's main critique is that there's a lot of talk about the philosophy of freedom and little to no action that will actually make liberty win. And again, they say by 2030. I think putting a date on it is also rather difficult. People like to put dates on different things, like when's the collapse going to happen? When's this? Like, no one ever really knows for sure. The same thing goes for science and technology. Things are rapidly developing and things can change at any moment, as you saw with COVID, that there's different possibilities. I don't like to put dates on things, but I do like to have general goals for myself, but I don't hold myself to the fire saying you must do this goal necessarily. So anyways, yeah, I talk a lot about the philosophy of freedom, but that's because freedom must be understood in the minds of masses. And as far as I'm concerned, the philosophy is talked about, but not statism, not voluntarism, not the root cause of the problem. So you can talk about philosophy all day, but if you're not talking about the root cause of the problem and the root cause solution, and not looking at history to show what has been possible, then you're not really going to find the best solution, I would say. Because people have been trying to vote and partake in politics for a very long time, and of course that reinforces statism, the very root cause belief system. So that's not going to help you attain freedom. And same thing with passing laws or changing laws, it reinforces that same belief system. So I'm afraid still over 90% of independent media doesn't talk about statism or voluntarism, which is why I'm beating a dead horse on that one, but it is changing, and it's quadrupling every single year the amount of people who are coming out with this perspective. So it is just a matter of time. Natural Law, Larkin Rose, Mark Passio, all these people, they're new. I'm new. Derek Brose, we're new. But we're entering the space of people who've been in that space for many, many years. And no, I don't think they created action in ways that they could have as well. You know, I think they can hold rallies. I think that they can do movie screenings. I think they can set up community gardens. I think they can do meetups and, you know, set up food forests. I think they can do so much more that they just aren't doing. And they can set up more community, more like, let's get involved, let's go to our neighbors, but they're not doing it. And I think that's a problem on their part. And so it has nothing to do with, okay, we need to get into politics, but rather there's stuff to do with philosophy that nobody's doing, even though it's about philosophy. And also, I don't see a lot of people talking about philosophy. I see a lot of people talking about the news. I see a lot of people talking about COVID and the symptoms and, you know, just things that rise to the top. So I don't necessarily agree with that last comment, but I do appreciate all the people who did send in their questionnaires. I thought that was really great. So if you have any ideas, share with me in the chat of this video. I appreciate it. I'm on every platform in case you didn't know, and I'll be holding more events to come. Thank you very much for watching. Check it out, jonesplantationfilm.com, jonesplantationfilm.com. All right, we're here, Jones Plantation movie screening, setting up. I'm here with Marcos. Marco.
Hey, same old. Here on Osceola County, Gulf's Landing. Having a lovely time with people that have the same thing in their minds, hearts, and souls, which is freedom, right? And it's going to first start with growing food. And believe it or not, it's so simple, right? But it's going to demonstrate and it's going to tie into where we came from, our roots, where man came from, the earth, the dust. And once we eat from it, and once we grow it, we tie into nature, okay? By way of permaculture, not agriculture. Okay, and we'll be able to have that symbiotic relationship, that energy, love, the frequencies that's resonating with each one of us. And freedom starts with that, growing food. Yeah. Time is now.
Look at that. These plants I showed on camera not so long ago in one of my videos, and they are already booming way more than they were just a few months ago. Finished the movie screening for the Jones Plantation. Very bright lights. A lot of people stayed. Had a little bit of speeches beforehand and afterhand, and a lot of great stuff. We've got Turtles and Bobby, featured star. Setting up our second movie screening of the Jones Plantation. Check it out, pretty cool.